What is the purpose of your life? An atheist would tell you that life has no purpose. A humanist would tell you that we're free to define our own purpose. And those who believe in reincarnation make it their life's goal to progress up the scale of beings. Some people live their lives simply trying to do more good things than bad things. Others would unashamedly tell you that he who dies with the most toys wins. But most people will struggle to define what the purpose of their life is, the purpose that they truly live to fulfill. And so we let the world around us, our culture, define what that purpose should be, and we live it out to different levels of intentionality. The standard pattern of life goes something like this. We enter this world as tiny, helpless babies who need everything done for us. We learn to crawl, to walk, to talk, to play and laugh. We go to school to learn, moving from one grade to the next, knowing that if we want a good job, we need to go to college, and so we need to do well in school. We get our first job and start working our way up the career ladder. We get married and maybe start a family and encourage our kids to do well in school too. We're always working to get that promotion, to move on in our career. We're also helping our kids move to that next stage in life. Later on, we look towards retirement, where we can finally start enjoying life and taking things easy. We look forward to grandchildren and great-grandchildren if we live that long. And finally, we all end up here. Do you see what happens? We're always living life for that next stage. And then when we reach that, we're looking to the next. We're never completely satisfied because we're not living out our purpose. Jesus told a story of a man who lived just like this. The ground of a certain rich man yielded an abundant harvest. He thought to himself, "What shall I do? I have no place to store my crops." Then he said, "This is what I'll do. I will tear down my barns and build bigger ones, and there I will store my surplus grain. And I'll say to myself, you have plenty of grain laid up for many years. Take life easy, eat, drink, and be merry." But God said to him, "You fool, this very night your life will be demanded from you. Then who will get what you have prepared for yourself?" This was a wealthy man. This wasn't his first abundant harvest. It wasn't his first plan to build bigger barns. This was a man who constantly lived his life looking to that next stage until he got to that point later in life where he felt he had enough stored up for retirement. But then his life came to an end and he never got to enjoy what he spent his whole life working for, what he spent his whole life pursuing. Is this really what we're made for? Surely our lives are purposeful in and of themselves, not only if we reach a certain level of relational and financial security where we can take life easy, eat, drink, and be merry. So if God made us for a purpose, then what is it? How does He define the purpose for which He created us? Well, the Bible was written to answer this question. But to look at and understand all that the Bible has to say about our purpose would take a lifetime. But there is a document called the Westminster Catechism, which seeks to summarize the key truths of the Bible, kind of like what we're trying to do with a compass. And the Westminster Catechism starts out with this same question: what is the chief end of man? What is our purpose? And as a summary of the Bible's teaching on this question, the answer that is given is this: the chief end of man is to glorify God and enjoy Him forever. Now, that's simple enough to say, but not necessarily that easy to do. So let's unpack it a little. So what does it mean to glorify God? 1 Corinthians 10:31 tells us, "So whether you eat or drink or whatever you do it all for the glory of God." First off, let's make one thing very clear. When the Bible commands us to glorify God, it's not telling us to add to God's glory as if He were lacking anything. God is infinite in glory and majesty and has been for all eternity, long before we were created. When we glorify God, we're not giving Him anything. We don't add luster to Him. That's as impossible as it is to add splendor to a sunset just by viewing it. But we can gaze in wonder at a sunset, and similarly, we can behold in awe the beauty and glory of the Lord. but we never make him greater. We never make him more glorious. Another word which is often used synonymously with glorify is magnify. And we can use the word magnify in two ways. The first way we use the word magnify is with regards to microscopes. Microscopes can be used by scientists to make things which are normally invisible to the human eye large enough to see in detail. They can magnify tiny cells to a scale of hundreds and thousands of times of what they usually are, so that we can see their intricate detail. The other sense we use magnify is not through a microscope, but through a telescope. A telescope takes something huge and distant like a planet, star, or nebula and brings it to us so we can begin to see it for what it truly is. When a telescope magnifies something, it makes it tangible for us. It lets us see how amazing that is. The telescope adds nothing to the beauty of the object being viewed. It just allows us to see that beauty. When we magnify or glorify God, we're beginning to see him and appreciate him for who he really is. We no longer see him as distant, but we begin to admire him in awe and wonder as we see more and more of his greatness. And we can glorify God both inwardly and outwardly. Inwardly, we glorify God when we have a high view of him in our hearts and in our minds. We don't try and bring him down to our level, but we remember that he is something vastly different and infinitely more perfect than we are. And we glorify God inwardly when we have a great confidence in him, when we trust in him and his provision and love for us with our whole hearts, and when we have a strong affection for him, when we view him as the greatest of all treasures, desiring nothing or no one more than him. And we can glorify God outwardly when we acknowledge him and praise his name. We can glorify him with the words we say as we sing his praises, and as we speak out of pure hearts with no hint of deceit, malice, or bitterness on our tongues. And we can glorify him with our actions in the way we love and serve people in his name. If we want to put it simply, we glorify God by making him look great to both ourselves and to others. Again, we're not adding to his greatness. We just act as a telescope, making his greatness easy for everyone, including ourselves, to see. So that's what it means to glorify God. But what does it mean to enjoy him forever? Everybody wants to be happy. Everybody seeks happiness. Seeking happiness is so fundamental to what it means to be a human that the founding fathers of this country saw fit to list it along with life and liberty as one of our inalienable rights, the pursuit of happiness. Blaise Pascal, the 17th century scientist and philosopher, said it this way: "All men seek happiness. This is without exception. Whatever different means they employ, they all tend to this end. The cause of some going to war and of others avoiding it is the same desire in both, attended with different views. The will never takes the least step but to this object. This is the motive of every action of every man, even of those who hang themselves." Every action we take, every decision we make is for our happiness. Even if in the short term there is a season of unhappiness, we believe that those choices will lead to the greatest happiness for our souls. And these aren't necessarily sinful choices either. The Bible gives us many reasons as to why Jesus was willing to go through the agony of the cross. But Hebrews chapter 12 verse 2 says, "Let us fix our eyes on Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith, who for the joy set before him endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God." Jesus was willing to go to the cross for the joy which was waiting for him on the other side. The joy of rescuing his people, the joy of spending eternity with his beloved bride in his Father's kingdom. We all pursue happiness. We all pursue joy. But the problem is we spend most of our lives pursuing it in all the wrong places. We pursue relationships and wealth and power and success and comfort and ease. It's not that any of these things are wrong in and of themselves. It's just that they always leave us wanting. We want more power and more wealth and more comfort. These things never satisfy. But that's because we weren't created to find our ultimate joy in these things. Our ultimate joy, the ultimate satisfaction for our souls, can only be found in God alone. We were made to enjoy God forever. That is our purpose. But how do these two go together? Remember how the Westminster Catechism said that our chief end, our purpose, is to glorify God and enjoy Him forever. So how does giving glory to God and our joy and happiness fit together? Now this is hard because we often view glorifying God as this serious spiritual activity where to take any joy in it would make it selfish and therefore not be glorifying to God. Or are these two purposes? Sometimes we're meant to be glorifying God, other times we're meant to be enjoying Him. Well, thankfully, neither of these are true. The way we glorify God is by enjoying Him forever. We bring the most glory to God when we delight ourselves in Him. Glorifying God and enjoying Him aren't two separate pursuits. They are one and the same. The true purpose of our life is to glorify God by enjoying Him forever. Or as one pastor and theologian put it, God is most glorified in us when we are most satisfied in Him. My wife is a wonderful cook. She's just great at mixing flavors and textures. And when she makes me a meal, she gets the most glory. She's made to look great when I dig in and enjoy it. If I just sit there looking at the meal and thanking her for it, the full experience of her work cannot be delighted in. But she feels most appreciated when with every mouthful I let out an of delight. And in a similar way, God doesn't want us to stoically glorify Him through various lifeless rituals. He wants us to delight ourselves in Him. He wants us to dive in and enjoy Him for all that He is for us. That is how God gets the most glory. The Bible is full of calls for us to find our delight and satisfaction in God alone. Taste and see that the Lord is good. Blessed is the one who takes refuge in Him. Delight yourself in the Lord, and He will give you the desires of your heart. The reason for which you were created, the very reason that you exist, is to bring glory to God, to declare throughout the whole of your life that your God is great. And the way that you do this is by finding your deepest joy and delight in Him, because you know that He is the only one who can truly satisfy your soul.